Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. I hope you can hear me and you can see me. Today, we are going to talk about Russian immigration, the first wave. If you're able to see me, if you're able to hear me, please let me know. I'm also going to share a link to my new videos. So today, I've shared shorts. So I don't only do virtual tours, lectures, and talks, but I've also started to show you some snippets of Moscow, everyday life in Moscow. So I'm waiting for your comments and welcome again. Before we start, let me tell you a few words about myself and about this tour. Um, I'm a professional tour guide. I've been working as a tour guide for over 7 years. I do all types of tours. I show the highlights of the city, the most beautiful places. I also show hidden gems. And on my tours, like, the main street, Moscow's main street. And on my tours, I talk about a Russian culture, everyday life. And I've started doing more and more talks on what is happening in Russia, what is happening with Russia, its history, through literature, through some important historical moments. And immigration was always my focus, my academic focus, and my life interest. Moreover, I did my master's degree in migration studies at Tel Aviv University. So today, during this talk, I'm going to share my thoughts, my professional expertise, and I'd say like days or maybe months of research. This is certainly a very important and emotional topic for me in the context of what is happening today in the world with Russia. As you may know, there's a new wave of emigration, which is, I believe, clear for everyone. So I believe it's very important to look 100 years back and even more, more than 100 years back, to see how the first emigration was happening, what were the big names behind it, what made it so special and relevant actually till this day. Hello, Adrian. Hello, Robin. I'm glad that you're able to see me. I'm always happy to see you on my tour. And another thing I'd like to mention that I do it as a tip supported tour, as we did with Hago, so more people will be able to join me. And the idea is that you can contribute as much as you can, but this is depending on how much you enjoy the tour and uh, depending on some other reasons. So this is the thing that will help me to continue doing tours, to continue doing it publicly. So thank you to all of you who keep supporting my channel, who keep supporting my work, because apart from YouTube channel and videos and lectures, I also write essays, and I try to do as many things as I can. I can hear you. Am I frozen? Adrian is writing that I'm frozen. Please, everyone, write who's here with me. I see there are not that many people. So if everything is fine, please write a plus. If not, and I'm frozen or somewhere in the fridge, please write a minus. YouTube is way different from Hago, because I hope that this video will be available on YouTube after the tour. So I will focus on comments at the end of the tour. So if there are some relevant comments, relevant to what I'm telling you, of course I will pay attention. Hello, Joyce. Hello, everyone. So I hope that everything is fine technically. In case it's not, then please try to restart the page. So let me start with what was happening before the revolution and what do we mean by the first wave of immigration. So the first wave of immigration is more about the revolution, 1917. and then all the way to the 20s, till the moment that it was still allowed to leave the country. So we'll have an overview of the immigrations and the story of immigrations in Russia. Um, so of course there were some kind of immigrants or in Russia or in the Russian Empire even before the revolution, but it still remained a semi-legal phenomenon because under pre-revolutionary Russian law, Russian citizenship was highly regulated, which means that the law restricted time spent abroad to 5 years. The violation of the law was punished by expulsion and seizure of property. Thus, when we talk about the period from 1905 to 1910, of over 1 million migrants who left the Russian Empire for the United States and Canada, only 5.5% were actually officially classified as Russians, including categories of like Great Russians, Little Russians. That is sometimes referred this way to like Belarusians as Little Russians, Belarusians. They were predominantly Jewish. There was a huge Jewish population in Russia. 27% were Poles, and then there were Germans, Finns. Again, we are talking about the period of Russian Empire. And it's important to mention here, that of course it was very different understanding in terms of statistics, in terms of the data. And this is a very important question for our talk today. There are, let's say, the numbers vary depending on the organization, but one of the figures that you can find is that after the Civil War that ended in 1922, the number of immigrants was over 1 million people. To be exact, 1,160,000 people. This immigration has left the brightest mark in history. And even though we had other immigrations after that, after the Second World War, and this immigration of intelligent people, so-called Jewish immigration that I want to do a lecture about, the immigration after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But there's still much more information and everything about the first wave. So again, during this tour, we will talk. We will focus on it, what makes it special, and what was so different. I'm just looking at the comments. The new website is coming soon. When, Tanya? I don't really know about the new website. I'm sorry. I guess it's better to discuss it in the chat. So I just keep doing what I can. By the way, if you're joining this talk, please don't forget to press the button like, because this is how YouTube algorithm works. So more people will be able to see this video, to find my channel, and it takes just a second, but always highly appreciated with all the videos, comments, likes, shares, and everything. So who were these people? Let's have a brief overview. This immigration is often known as white émigré in a French way, because at some point Paris became the center of the first immigration, and again later known as white immigration. Why white? Because during the Civil War, during the Revolution, they were Reds, later known as Bolsheviks or communists, and then whites that supported the monarchy. So, of course, many people who opposed the regime, who opposed the Reds, Bolsheviks, ended up being in exile. White immigrants. They were patriots. What to look for? They left Russia only in the face of a direct threat to their life, stayed together for decades, cultivated their Russianness in every possible way, and declared themselves to the world in this capacity. The general idea, I mean, the general stereotype and understanding of Russian first immigrants were, of course, the elite, the gentry, the nobility, this rich and often famous. There are many big names. So these people who love their country, who wanted to live in the country, who kept cherishing it through times. And we will see that it was way, way different than other immigrations, not only in Russia, but in many other places in the world. Because what happened, and I don't know if you have any other, if you know about any other presidents in the world, what happened is that the elite, rich and famous people, ended up being in exile. It wasn't their choice, it wasn't their decision. In many ways, these people didn't have any other options, because those that stayed mainly ended up being executed. This is the story of the country, the story, the civil war, and the consequences of the revolution. So let's talk about what was happening before, about the revolution that I mentioned several times. So the Russian monarchy had been overthrown by the 1917 February Revolution, and Russia was in a state political flux. Bolshevik rule was not universally accepted, and the country descended into civil war. So when you learn about Russia, when you read about Russia, I believe that many of you have heard about the revolution, and the civil war is often omitted, even actually in Russia. So the civil war was still 1922, so for 5 years. And the two largest combatants were the Red Army, fighting for the Bolshevik form of socialism led by Vladimir Lenin, that I believe everyone knows about, and the loosely allied forces known as the White Army, which included diverse interests, favoring political monarchism, capitalism, and social democracy. So when I talked about stereotypes and this nobility, people that were supporting monarchy, it's not really the case. They were really various groups, various types of people. So they were also rival militant socialists, anarchists. Some anarchists, some non-ideological green armies opposed to the Reds. And many, many, many other groups. So we won't go into detail, but again, this is the root of everything. Most white immigrants left Russia from 1917 to 1920. So in these 3 years, and only in 3 years, numbers are estimated from 900,000 people to 2 million. So there's actually a big gap between there's big difference, because again, this is just about how you calculate it, because of the statistics in other countries. So again, just asking ourselves, like these days when everything is possible with the internet, it's easier to follow. Many of these people that ended up in exile after the revolution didn't even have passports. So they had passports of the Russian Empire, then the country no longer exists. So it really creates a very difficult situation. And the question is, who is going to calculate it? Because generally, how it happens now is that the country regulates, its border, other countries regulates its border, and then you still have more or less the information about it, either from the country that immigrants are originally from, or you refer to international organization, but it still was, too early. That's why there's such a big gap. Um, I'd say, I in this case, I'd refer to a bigger number, to approximately, 2 million people. But again, the number is even bigger when we take into consideration uh, the wave in general. So this is just what we have in some sources only for 3 years. Uh, this So, what were the main reasons that these people were leaving the country? And I think it's pretty clear with the preface, with what was happening before. Of course, the position about the future of Russia, about the political ideas to where the country was happening for, basically anti-Bolsheviks. And among them were some really big names, such as Ivan Bunin, or Ivan Bunin in Russian, who ended up being the first Nobel Prize winner in literature from Russia in 1933. So he was really open about it. Of course, there were many, as I said, from the royal family and or somehow belonged to, uh, and these people, were certainly a target for the new government, because the goal of the new state was to show that we are better than monarchy and everything that was before them. Uh, the so let me conclude with also who were these people. Among them were immigrants, were military men, nobles, entrepreneurs. In terms of like the categories of people, we talked about political parties, but it's also about like social class. The general idea, the general image that, again, this was the elite, but they were military men who were supporting the whites. And this was actually a pretty big group of people: nobles, entrepreneurs, intelligentsia, Cossacks, clergy, civil servants, as well as members, of the families. White immigrants were generally speaking anti-communist and did not consider the Soviet Union and its legacy to be representative of Russia, but rather of an occupying force. And they were at some point also trying to like create another Russia. There was Russia in exile that is still behind us in the scenes. Thank you, Joyce, for your support and your comments. The number and geography of immigration. So we already mentioned, the numbers. The most of the sources refer to the Red Cross. So this is approximately 2 million. As for the places, in the beginning of the tour, I mentioned Paris. And you can see some really big names in Russian art, in Russian literature. Um, well, Bunin, who I've just mentioned, the first Nobel Prize winner in literature, he moved to Paris. But actually, if you look at most of the fashion brands back then, if you look at the story behind Chanel, you'll see that there were many, many Russians working behind the scenes. and there were even like some Russian fashion brands and Russian models. So it's pretty much everywhere in France, and there was a huge influence. For instance, if you know, like everyone knows, pretty much everyone in the world knows Chanel number 5. Mm, the creator is Ernest Bohr, who's actually an immigrant from the Russian Empire. He created some other perfumes, and if you look again at Hollywood, I mean, I'm talking about Paris because there was a huge influence. And if you've been to Paris and paid attention, um, there's a really big Russian cultural part. From the 20s, if you go to Musée de Pompidou, Pompidou Museum, you will see many works of Russian artists. Again, those that were from those that were living in exile in Paris. So those were really big and you can say like prominent diaspora. Berlin was also a place with the big Russian diaspora. Uh, Many were moving to Paris after Nazis came into power. Um, then in the 20s, there were also other big cities for immigrants, such as Belgrade, Prague, and Sofia. And then there was another one in China. So pretty much they spread around uh, the whole world. They were uh, everywhere. There were many Russians from Yugoslavia. So they were political reasons. Uh, they were also moving to the places with the Russian community. So, for instance, in Berlin, the Russian community was in 1921 was approximately 200,000 people, which is really a lot. Especially, you know, when we talk 100 years ago. Therefore, and therefore people were motivated to move to places where you know they would know someone and someone was able to help them. This works pretty much the same everywhere. In the countries of Europe, in particular in Serbia, it was much easier, you know, to get a good position and work, having the citizenship of this country. But many of the Russian refugees, being proud of their Russian citizenship, didn't accept the citizenship of the country out of the sense of patriotism in which they settled. And this is coming back to what I was talking in the beginning of the tour, that even while they were moving to other countries, I wouldn't say that many were marginalized, but they still kept preserving their culture and their traditions. As for nationalities, it's also important to mention that not all of them were Russian, because generally when we talk about Russia, it seems like everyone is Russian. And well, the truth is, in Russia, there are nearly 200 um, ethnicities. And again, the Russian Empire had, you know, like other countries that that are now like independent countries. So there were many Jews that were moving from Russia, and when we talk about like Hollywood, these big companies behind them, there are many Jews that you know became founders of it, and even like some big brands that everyone knows in the world, like Max Factor, was also mm, established by a Russian immigrant, a Jewish immigrant. So there's just really a lot of story behind it. That's why I also want to do like a separate Jewish immigration from Russia lecture and discussion. So there were Jews, Ukrainians, Armenians, Georgians, and Germans, and you know, of course, Russia. Um, So, among other cities and places that were not that popular were also Portugal, Spain, Romania, Belgium, Sweden, Switzerland, and Italy, Turkey as well. So there were also places, as I said, in China, in Central Asia, and Western China. And after the withdrawal of US and Japanese troops from Siberia, some emigrants traveled to Japan. So, the capital in far east for emigration was Harbin, but generally the centers were again Berlin and Paris. Um, when I do these tours, and I did this tour on Hego, I had a number of people writing me that one of the family members or the family is actually originally from Russia. So you can just, or maybe some of your friends, let me know in the chat, some of your friends or someone you know. I've also had many tourists, well, within person tourists that were coming to Moscow, whose ancestors also moved from Russia. They were creating centers of emigration. So with Paris and Berlin and then some other big cities, you'd have like the center of education, Russian universities, Russian newspaper, the Day of Culture, which was celebrated on the 6th of June, the Pushkin's birthday, the number one Russian writer. And to kind of like show you the brilliance behind it, the names, because we can talk about we can talk about some facts and general aspects, but I think it's also quite important to see what were the people behind it, what were the dreams, and what the goals. So I want to share with you, those of you that in the chat will be able to see. I want to share with you the list of names. There are just it's really huge. Among them are philosophers, artists, writers, composers, musicians, singers, again, members of the royal family. So really, by saying that, I can't imagine that anywhere else in the world there is such a big name of people that just belong to one immigration wave. I'm going to send the names that we can see together, just to go through. And it's just a small part of it, really. So let me read. Ivan Bunin, again, the Nobel Prize. Mark Chagall, the artist. Fyodor Shaliapin, he's still considered to be one of the best singers in Russian history. Mikhail Chekhov, he's the founder of an acting method. Vasily Kandinsky, he's also a founder of not an acting method, but an artistic style. Then we have Korovin, Kuprin, many artists, Vladimir Nabokov, who is also known all around the world as one of the greatest writers, Leonid Pasternak, the father of the Nobel Prize winner in literature, Boris Pasternak, Karl Fabergé, everyone knows about like Fabergé. Not, I just keep saying like everyone knows, but this is just something that is truly a signature of Russian culture these days. Grandparents of US fashion designer Ralph Lauren, and so on and so on. It's not, like being, patriotic and saying, like this is the best and the best. It's really tragic to see that so many people that would be able to make a huge impact to develop their culture, to make it greater, to be proud of it. And it's again important to mention that they loved it. They really, really wanted to contribute, but the country didn't want them. And what happened is that many that were even rich and famous ended up living in poverty because you were just living without anything, barely anything you had. So some were able, to take like paintings and then sell them abroad. But you cannot take everything. You cannot take your mansion, especially, during the time of the revolution. The main goal was to save your life. And I had a tour about the revolution. It's more like about also diaries and literature by Ivan Bunin Kurzday. So if you're interested, let me know. I will send it to you. But it's brilliant to see how it was happening with these people. And then behind every person, there is a story, there is a huge story. And one of the stories of Russian immigrants, so the first way that I'm planning on sharing with you will be Ivan. I love literature, as I love literature, and I want to yes, I want to show it as a personal story about a man who was a very famous and talented writer, and he was barely able, at some point in his life to find money for food and everything. It's a shame. It's a shame, when this it and it's absolutely tragic in my opinion. So to wrap it up, I see that some people are leaving. I want to share with you some quotes from Prince Yusupov. Prince Felix Yusupov. He was member of one of the richest families in the world, like when and certainly one of the richest families in Russia. This man was extremely privileged and also extremely educated. So when we talk about Russian immigrants, this is also important to mention that these people were extremely educated, and that it was also one of the outcomes of what was happening. So some of his ideas, in my opinion, are even progressive to this day. So I'm going to read a few quotes for you, and then I will send them to you in the chat. Russia and Germany fell under the rule of two monsters, bastards of pride and hatred, Bolshevism and Nazism. And Bolshevism is not all Russia. Nazism is not all Germany. A few families remained who kept the traditions of old Russia. Russian aristocrats became cosmopolitans who worshipped foreigners and now then traveled abroad. It was good manners to send clothes to Paris and London to be washed. Almost all of my mother's acquaintances deliberately spoke only French and distorted Russian. My brother and I, and so on. And really, many were like more European. That was one of the complaints, that were kind of like far from the reality and far from the society. So thank you very much for joining me today. I'm sending you the quotes in the chat. So if you want to learn more also about immigration, I highly recommend you looking at the memoirs of those immigrants and things that they were able to experience, how things were happening back then. So I see that we have only 3 people in the chat. So I will leave this video for a day. Yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. I hope you enjoyed the talk. And if you want to support my work, you can make a contribution on PayPal and buy me coffee. This will be really helpful. So thank you again for watching. Have a wonderful week. Goodbye.